just be prepared to get ripped apart. Um, you know, you got to have thick skin, not
Yep.
take things personally. I think the whole point of science, right, is we're all searching for truth. And if you can't pass the rigor test of people trying to poke holes in your hypotheses or
Yeah.
your statements, then you probably shouldn't be in science. Again, you need thick skin. You also need to think very analytically and look at things from different perspectives.
All right. Welcome back to the Higher Thoughts podcast. I'm super excited. Today we have Kyle Boyar on. Kyle, we've known each other for what, a couple years now, but really haven't had a chance to like sit down and have an in-depth convo. So I'm super excited for this. You've been in the cannabis space for what, like 13 years now, I think is what I saw on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm a grandpa. Been
That's
around for a
okay.
while. Yeah.
Well, we need people like that though, like weathered industry professionals. I'm curious, do you want to just give a quick little snippet about yourself for the viewers that may not be familiar?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, Kyle Boyer. I've been working in cannabis testing for 13 years, and I got my start doing lab testing at SC Labs in Santa Cruz back in the Prop 215 days when it was purely medical and really focused more on helping people. It's sort of evolved a lot, I feel like, into recreational and other things. But yeah, started as a lab technician there, starting with the chemistry side, and then I saw a need for really some help in the microbial arena of things for the lab. So went to JC. I'd already had my neuroscience degree at that point, but I never took microbiology. So I just went and took micro at a JC and started helping out with the micro program there. Worked my way up to be a lab manager. And it's it's a lot to run, but at that time the highest throughput analytical lab in the world. So it's really
Jeez.
turning a crank at that point. And so I started to think more like, how can I diversify and kind of broaden my horizons? So believe it was around 2015 when one of my collaborators, co-authors, Andrew Pham, invited me to an ACS meeting down in San Diego. I'd never been to an ACS meeting, had no idea what it was about other than, well, chemistry, right? And scientists. And I was like, well, that seems like a good place to start meeting other scientists and networking.
Definitely.
So, yeah, so I went down there and met Ezra Pryor, who's one of the founders of CANN, the Cannabis Chemistry Subdivision at ACS. And I just said, "Hey, how can I help?" And I previously did a lot in music and electronic music, so I had some social media skills and was savvy there. Um, and basically just started running their social media and helped build that. And I've gone through a lot of different roles at ACS, and I'm now currently chair. It's been doing the volunteering thing, yeah, for over 10 years now, with a little bit of breaks in there, but basically, yeah, about a decade now. And yeah, so I mean, currently helping just steer the cannabis chemistry enterprise at ACS. So I guess, yeah, that was sort of my branch out of the lab.
Okay.
After, let's see, it was like 2016 when I decided to make the jump. I moved down to San Diego. Did the consulting thing for a bit because it was like there was really a need for more labs, right? This was that kind of transitionary phase where everybody and their mother wanted to open a lab, but
Okay.
there were no other labs really. There were only like I think 3 or 4 at the time.
Wow. So
So
early.
very early, yeah.
Yeah.
So I decided to start a consulting business, and started helping out build out some of the labs, early labs in California. Um, and what I learned, at least as a consultant, and I still have the consulting company, but it's like what I've learned as a consultant is, sometimes you're flush and other times, it's hit and miss, right? You're not getting a steady paycheck. It's very obviously entrepreneurial, and you sort of just it's not consistent, right? So
Right.
sometimes it's great, sometimes it's not. But I wanted something more stable. So at that point, I joined medicinal genomics. So really, I was started in sales. At that time, nobody really wanted to get going with microbial because they had triple quad mass specs that they had to buy, which
Very
that investment,
expensive.
yeah,
Yeah.
expensive. That investment comes first. I actually transitioned out of sales and became an FAS, field application scientist. And I think while I was there, I really kind of discovered that a decent public speaker. Can really break down and convey complex scientific topics for the layman. So did a lot on the speaking circuit while I was there. I was there for about 2 years. Did a lot of cool stuff. Some of the genome work that we did there was funded by cryptocurrency. That was sort of like,
Wow.
yeah, so that was like during the big heyday of Bitcoin, like the first big rally.
Yep.
Um, and actually I was broke as hell. So actually that Bitcoin that I had saved me because it
Yeah.
was like, living in San Diego is not cheap. And I'm like, man,
No.
I have like no money, but my Bitcoin keeps going up. So that is actually, it was nice. It gave me a little cushion. But anyway, so yeah, I did a lot of cool stuff while I was there. Um, did a lot of field work, kind of introduced a lot of people to microbial testing for cannabis, and I learned quite a lot along the way. Um, and yeah, so I guess after 2 years of doing that, I decided to take a little break, and then I made a transition into cannabis tech.
Okay.
Um, so the tech, and this was actually through one of my early consulting jobs. So one of the labs I was consulting for, you know, there were no limb systems that were actually outfitted for cannabis testing. There's so many unique rules and hoops you have to jump through to become compliant in the cannabis testing world that are just not the case in any other industry. I mean, things think like metric, right? And things
Right.
like that. Obviously, the workflows are also different. There's so many different analyses. Obviously, in other industries, there are a wide variety of analyses that are similar, but cannabis is unique. So one of the other consultants that was hired, my friend Gary, um, Gary and I kind of just connected, and also Andrew was working on this as well. Andrew, who I mentioned, who kind of got me into ACS. Um, we all kind of got together, and he's like, "Yeah, I've surveyed every LIMS platform out there, and none of these are going to meet your needs. At least not without hundreds of thousands of dollars in customizations and build out, which a lot of these LIMS companies do." So at that time, he was like, "Yeah, well, let's just build this ourselves." So that was back in that was 28, late 2016 or 2017 when he thought of that
Okay.
idea. And then 2020 came around. He's like, "Well, we need help still building all these new functionalities, new tools. We'd like to grow it. So would you like to come aboard?" I was director of product science there for about a little over a year and a half. So that was really making sure that all of those instruments can communicate with the limbs, at least get the data out in a format that's parsable. And so that was a lot of my job, writing SOPs for how to do that so that the labs knew exactly, all right, here's what the output file needs to look like. Here's how we parse it. Here's what fields we need to get a complete set of information. I think some of the companies that I worked with, some companies were easier than others. Let me tell you, there are certain companies that it was like pulling teeth trying to get the correct data output
Oh,
format.
I could imagine.
And I'm not a coder, right? I'm not a tech guy at all. I'm sort of bridging the gap between the the coders and the people who are really good at the tech side with the scientific and analytical people. Work with a lot of different people to get that to work the way it was supposed to. Uh, and some things were really cool. I mean, like we were able to get full chromatograms
Wow.
into the limbs. So you could like even do your data analysis within the limbs, which was kind of cool. Or at least not full data analysis, but look in, like, let me drill into this peak and see what the heck is that, like what's going on here. Uh, so that was pretty neat. But again, startups are also very challenging. I've pretty much worked in startups up until recently, my whole career. So it's remarkable I don't have more wrinkles, But anyway, I did that for about a little over a year and a half, and then I decided to make a change. At that point, I had saw an ad for UC San Diego that was for cannabis testing, and I was like, "That's super interesting." So I reached out, sent my resume in, and almost immediately got a response from the PI for the lab, this guy Jeremiah. And Jeremiah seemed he's like, "Yeah, you're really exactly what we're looking for."
That's
um,
awesome.
so yeah, I got really lucky with that one. And so I worked at the reference lab for the state of California. It was actually a short-lived experience, I'll be honest.
Okay.
I was not prepared for the politics that go into academia. I knew that it was going to be a different environment. I knew the pay wasn't going to be as good, unfortunately.
Yep.
Um, yeah, shout out to the academics that still do what they do, man. Like
It's
I don't know how
rough.
you. It's rough, man. I don't know how you do it and how you survive. I mean, living where I do in San Diego, it is damn near impossible to survive on what I was given.
I could
I was pulling
imagine.
out I was pulling out of my savings just to exist.
Yep,
And that, and I don't really spend. I'm like pretty I wouldn't say I'm overly frugal, but I'm pretty mindful of how I spend my money and where
sure.
I spend my money. So I was just like, man, this is rough. And then had some unfortunate life events. My father got diagnosed with cancer pretty much
Okay.
right after I accepted that job.
Oh, dang.
Within 6 months, he was gone. So it was a rough ride for me. I did not handle it very well. It was my first time losing anyone that was so significant in my life. So I just, I did not do well. I don't do well with grief. Let me tell you, I do not do well with
I don't
grief.
think
So when I
anyone
went through that,
does, if we're
some
being
people are
honest.
stronger than yeah, I think no one does. I would agree, right? But I think some people have more resilience than others. I mean, you have to have resilience and
Fair.
grit to stay in this industry. But yeah, that one really cut deep. So I basically did not I was not able to handle all the things that were being thrown at me,
It's
coupled with all the life
understandable.
stuff. Yeah, you're building an entire laboratory from scratch. You're in an entirely new environment, also one that is highly political that you really don't know the landscape of.
I learned that real quick at the university.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't know what you're I hadn't been in a college setting, or a higher education setting in years. I graduated from college in 2012. So like I had no idea what I was stepping into. But fortunately they were really kind over there. And they understood that, I had been drinking from the fire hose and also had, you know, while simultaneously getting hacked to pieces in my personal life. So they were very kind and just said, look, do you want the eject button? I said, yeah, I would really
Yeah.
like the eject button. This is too much for me to handle. Um, so for a while I was unemployed while I kind of processed everything. Which, also yeah, I was dwindling savings, not dwindling, but not doing so great on the savings because you're spending it just to exist.
Yep. Oh, trust me, I've been doing that since September, so I feel that.
Yeah. So anyway, I uh, took a little time, and then I was very fortunate. I was at a conference where I ran into someone that I knew who worked at Bio Rad, and he said, "I think you could do this job. We have an opening." And so actually, I went in trying to do food because I'd been through the in the trenches with cannabis testing for so long. I was like, maybe it'd be good to just diversify and try something different for
Right.
once. Which I did for a while. I ran West Coast for food for about a year at Bio Rad, and then at least on the field application side, that's what I was hired for. And then I got a new manager. My manager saw me on a call for a cannabis testing lab, and he goes, "Why do we have you doing food?" Like he's like,
Mhm.
"By all means, please keep learning the food stuff. I know you want to diversify your skill set," but he's like, "No, no, no, you belong doing this, for us. I want you doing this for us because some of the questions that were lobbed at some of my counterparts, I don't think anyone would have known how to answer the questions." And
Okay.
he was like so I think he saw that I was adept in that area, and he said, "Okay, yeah, yeah, you're running field applications for us for cannabis now." And he's the manager for the Americas, so or at least for North America. I guess he does Americas as a whole, but there's not really much in the way of regulated testing markets, right, in South America. So yeah, I basically am doing field applications for North America now with Bio Rad. I've been doing that for a little over 2 years now. It's been rewarding. It's a lot though. It's a huge territory as you can imagine, so a lot of
A
travel
lot of
here
travel,
there.
yeah. I'm curious,
Yeah,
what's that actually kinda, like, look like in a day to day? Because I've never really heard of a field application scientist role.
yeah, so I mean, and actually I didn't really know what it was either back when I first got this type of role, when I was at MG. But basically it's troubleshooting, right? It's
Okay.
troubleshooting, it's technical support, it's training, it's making sure that people are running things correctly, running the validated
Gotcha.
protocol. If they have questions on their data, why does my data look like this? What could have led to this? You see a weird signal or something. Well, okay, let's troubleshoot what could have gone wrong. Let's go back and diagnose exactly what you did. Let's look at the outcome, not only from the data perspective, but the actual physical plate. How did you prepare the sample? Let's look at all the little facets and then try and diagnose what went wrong so we can fix it and ensure that you get clean data moving forward. So that's at least kind of the scope of what a field application scientist does. But
Okay.
also, right, it's a competitive space. So any regulated testing market is highly competitive. So a lot of it is being the boots on the ground, being the eyes and the ears. What did you see when you went to the lab? What did you observe in terms of lab practices? What other platforms are there? What other, you learn sort of how to analyze the situation, and you're really supporting your salespeople so that they can understand what they're up against. Because not, the salespeople are not always on the ground. They're doing other things. Oftentimes they're
Right.
prospecting, they're quoting, they're doing all that kind of stuff. So really, the field applications is sort of, yeah, that eyes and ears, boots on the ground for the salespeople. Um, but I mean, I kind of wear both. I've done both, right? Both roles.
Right.
It's really a synergistic role with sales as well.
Got to wear a
And
lot of
yeah,
hats then.
oh man, yeah, it reminds me a lot of being in a startup in that regard too.
Yep.
Of course, I'm used to doing my own marketing, branding, things like that, which um, it's a little bit different in a corporate environment. They don't really want you doing that. That you leave that to the marketing team. um,
Right.
but I'm fortunate to have a great manager who supports me, and I can do these types of things on my own, on my own accord, really, as long as I keep within certain confines. So I'm really grateful to be talking with you today and being able to share just what I do in the field and all the different things that I've kind of learned and observed over the years.
Yeah, no, super happy to have you here. And that's cool that he kind of lets you venture outside of just strictly work too. Cause I know you do research on top of that. And then you'd mentioned like the public speaking. That's something I wanted to dive into because hopefully about a week out from having some vape cart research submitted to ACS Omega. And I'm curious, like, I appreciate it. Do you have any kind of like tips for a first time researcher that's like about to submit and go through the whole peer review process?
So I'm actually in the middle of peer review for 2 papers right now. Well, one I still haven't even gotten feedback on, and it's been over a year, which is a little strange to me.
Yeah.
It's a very, very high profile journal,
Okay.
so that makes sense to me. The other one is, I think really what it is be thorough, be complete, really kind of look at it from you don't know who your reviewers are, right? But
Right.
what you can do is just make sure that everything is kind of clear, concise. Don't venture too far into the weeds about random other things, right? You want to
Okay.
paint a picture. The whole goal of the paper is to be, make sure it's structured well, obviously abstract introduction, methods, results, discussion, future conclusions, future directions. Make sure it's structured well. Make sure your references and citations are all together and really well organized. There are a variety of tools out there to do that. I think when I did my first book chapters, I didn't know about any of these tools or didn't really know how to use them. I just sort of did the
Okay.
best I could, which once you have to add and insert things, it becomes a giant pain. So there are tools out there to make that easier.
Okay.
So I'd recommend, looking into those. I can't, there's one off the top I'm trying to remember, but a friend had recommended it, and it's, I think EndNote is one of, there's a couple, there's a few of them. There was one that we use, Zotero.
Yep.
That's the
I
one.
use that
There you
religiously.
go,
Yep.
Zotero. Zotero is the one that I'm thinking of. Yeah, that was recommended to me by one of my collaborators, and it's really good. It's super helpful. Makes things easier. And then yeah, really just be prepared to get ripped apart. um, you know, there's you gotta have thick skin, not take things personally. I think the whole point of science, right, is we're all searching for truth. And if you can't pass the rigor test of people trying to poke holes in your hypotheses or your statements, then you probably shouldn't be in science. Again, you need thick skin. You also need to think very analytically and look at things from different perspectives. You got to learn to put yourself in the reviewer's shoes as to, well, why are they making that comment? Or why do they feel that I'm being, overly generous or, saying that they say that, well, we don't think this is true. Well, well, why? And, be prepared to fire back with literature references and reasons for, why you feel the way that you do or why you're writing what you're writing and the conclusions you draw. Really, it's just, yeah, be prepared for people to try and poke holes. That's really just what it
Okay.
is. Make sure your work is as bulletproof as possible. I think in the lab, it's analogous to the lab testing space, right? Legal defensibility. You want to produce legally defensible data. If someone wants to scrutinize your data and decides to take this to court and say, well, you gave me a fail on chlorphenapyr, show me the mass spec data, show me mass transition, show me, qual and quant ions, show me all of that, right? And then show me your QCs. Like, you really need to have something that is bulletproof. And so how you do that is, you gather all the possible evidence and then you basically compile it. And that, obviously, that's what your references are for. That's why you cite things. Obviously, also, it has to be peer reviewed, right? That's the other thing I've noticed a lot in the cannabis space is there's a lot of non peer reviewed science that people try and pass off as truth. It's not
Oh,
the
okay.
truth until it's peer reviewed.
That's a good point.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is a young industry, and beyond that as well, right? Peer review literature takes time, and I
Yep.
think
That's what I'm learning.
a lot of people want to move fast. Again, I'm sitting
Yep.
here, 385 days in plus, I think, on this paper that we had submitted back in end of 2024. You know, so it just takes time. You have to be patient, and you really just have to approach things with an understanding. This is going to be a process. So if you think this is going to happen overnight, it's not, unfortunately. And especially with the current climate for science, I think we all have to be a little empathetic and be understanding that it's tough out there right now, especially because peer reviewers aren't often paid for that. That's again, I think a lot of people. It I think a lot of us could argue that the system is broken as hell. Um, Science isn't respected, unfortunately, as a lot of other professions. Sadly, I would say the same thing goes for things like medicine. I mean, I even heard recently because now we have AI. I think Elon Musk was like, medical school is pointless because we have AI, which I'm like, okay, if you
So
see
you
the
need to know how to
mistakes,
use the AI.
well, yeah, if you know how to prompt it, but beyond that,
Hmm.
AI hallucinates.
Very
And
true.
I think, it hallucinates studies, it generates things that sometimes are not true or not fact checked properly. And then beyond that, if for the medical side, it's like, okay, let's say one day that we're going to be having AI robots doing your surgery. I think we already use robotics and other things in surgery, but are you going to sue Chat GPT for malpractice? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
true. It
Like
brings up some good questions.
there's a lot of things that I think that's a very strong statement that I think is partially correct in some ways, but overall, I think that it's not entirely true. But again, I think the world is heading in a really weird direction overall. It's becoming more and more dystopian by the day. I feel like.
Completely agree. How do you think we got here? Like to the point where science has become kind of distrusted or maybe not as legitimized as it used to be?
Well, COVID had a big part in that, I think.
That's true.
Yeah, which, I think there are a lot of things that happened during COVID. Not only was it the biggest wealth transfer in history, but you had people that were locked down, people's personal freedoms were taken away. I personally was forced to get a third COVID shot because I worked at a university. There's a lot coming out about, cardiac issues and things like that
Yep.
associated. There's been a lot of people that have poked holes in the vaccines, right? I am not an anti-vaxxer by any
Hmm.
means at all. But what I will say is these things were definitely rushed out. This definitely was a big cash grab, for a lot of these manufacturers of vaccines. We have a vaccine injury fund. These companies are not held liable for the
I
mistakes that
find
and
that
or
crazy.
the incidents that occur because of these vaccines. So, and I think there's a reason for that. Because again, no, I'm not anti because I think that they play a very important role in public health. But the problem is that if there's no liability for when you cause people harm, that builds distrust. Just because you throw money at people, you still harm somebody. But again, can they account for every single possible biological scenario? No. And I think again, I'm not throwing rocks entirely at these people. We did the best we could to try and prevent something worse from happening and this thing spreading, and killing more people.
It's a good way to put it.
They were under a lot of pressure. And I mean, I remember the mentality during that time. I mean, I lost friends, close friends over. philosophies and how we should be protecting each other and ourselves and our communities during that time. Um, it was a really tough time for everyone mentally. There were a lot of catastrophizing, a lot of paranoia, a lot of just conflicting ideologies of what's acceptable and what's not. I remember a roommate basically was telling me, like, you need to tell us exactly where you're going, who you're meeting with. Like, it
Yeah, that's
felt like an
much.
ISO on it
Yeah,
in
yeah,
my own
really.
house. I was like, okay, this feels a little overbearing. I'm going for a walk, trying to get some sunshine, some vitamin
GMP
D.
protocols to that.
I vitamin D is important for serotonin production, and if serotonin promotes a feeling of well-being, I am
Yeah,
trapped in a box. I need to get outside. Sorry. So it just that's I think step one in how we kind of got to this area of distrust was there was a lot of that going on, a lot of just funkiness, and people just didn't trust what was happening in general.
okay.
And there's a lot of conspiracy theories around a lot of the stuff. I could go down a rabbit hole. I'm not going to go down a rabbit hole of COVID, but what I will continue to talk about is just um, as far as the distrust in science goes, I think there's a lot of oversimplified science that makes it to people. I think that most people really don't have. I mean, let's put it this way: in the U.S., there's a lot of people that can't even read, man.
Yeah,
Um,
and they're just
like
reading the
that.
headlines and the abstracts and sticking with
Well,
that.
yeah, well, a lot of people also love to cherry pick. Let's just grab a quote and then make a blanket statement about it. I've seen this even in the cannabis industry on LinkedIn.
All
I've
the
seen this
time.
quite a bit. If you're not reading the whole paper, then you're really not getting the full picture. Now people just say, "Well, I'm just going to put it in Chat GPT and summarize this for me,"
Right.
which also I think is a mistake. If you're really
Yep.
trying to understand deeply every little detail of a paper, summary is not appropriate. A full view of everything that went on in that paper and how they did their work is essential to really deeply understanding how a piece of work is generated or how the conclusions are drawn and all of that.
Certainly. I'm curious, like, what misconceptions do you still see kind of circulating when it comes to cannabis and cannabis research? Is there any big bro science headline that comes to mind?
Man, I don't want to take shots at Huberman, but man, because I love Huberman's podcast, but one of the misconceptions he made like this generalization about indica into couch and all.
Oh, yeah.
I was like,
I
dude,
still hate
please
that.
don't. You had an opportunity to dispel so many myths about cannabis, and then you
Mm,
propagated them. Like,
yep.
come on, man! Like, this is so much more nuanced than just puns, right?
Right. Yeah.
Puns help people remember things. Don't get me wrong, but that was like that was a bummer to see. I am really tired of the neem oil hypothesis for cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome. I still see it propagated somehow, even though it's been dispelled. That's actually one of the papers that I'm working on, or we are about to submit, is
Okay.
the chemistry of neem oil. So I did that in collaboration with the folks at Abstracts and a handful of others. People like Cody Peterson were involved with that one. But yeah, we poke holes in the neem hypothesis, which yeah, there's some overlap, but really it's not the same thing at all. Um, you
Okay.
know, excessive neem oil consumption can cause blindness and other things. There's all sorts
Jeez.
of other like neem is not something to be messed with for sure. Like, and
Hmm.
applied at the wrong times can really have negative outcomes. The active in that one is zataractin.
Okay.
It's actually, it also can be a abortifacient, which basically means it can like they use it in India to try and abort unwanted
Wow.
pregnancies.
I did not
So
know
like
that.
it's a very powerful thing. It's also
Yeah.
got a lot of volatiles in there as well. A lot of sulfur compounds, which
Okay.
that's why neem smells like gross. It's because it's got a lot of these volatiles in there. So and of course that's where abstracts comes in since that's sort of their focus with that 2DGC and that SCD. They've got a lot of cool toys, I gotta say.
Yeah, and well, I don't even know if we have a really good understanding of CHS itself yet, do we? Because that's something that I've been diagnosed with a couple times, and it was actually found out to be gastroparesis after they did a stomach emptying test, basically eating radioactive food and watching how long it takes to empty from my stomach. They found that that was a big cause of nausea, vomiting. And so, like, I've been incorrectly diagnosed with CHS, even having like stopped cannabis for 6, 7 months, but still had the nausea, vomiting. So, like, we try to test for it and disprove it. But I did a little bit of research myself on CHS back when the doctors were really pushing that narrative for myself. And I was just seeing conflicting views like crazy. Like you'd mentioned, a lot of people saying neem, some people just blanket saying that it was concentration or THC percentage, and trying to correlate high dose cannabis use with it. But I don't know. What's your thoughts on kind of our understanding of CHS? And do you want to go into that a
Yeah,
little bit?
sure. Yeah, sure. I mean, so there's a lot that we don't know with that, and I would agree that a lot of it, not a lot of it, because we don't have good metrics on what is or what isn't as far as because we don't even have. I think the Rome four diagnostic criteria, like that was sort of the standard for it back when. Again, I think doctors are becoming more hip to it, but they do like to just slap
Yeah.
a CHS diagnosis on something. If it's, oh, you use cannabis, okay, yeah, that's got to be what it is. I think in our medical environment right now, unfortunately, doctors are overwhelmed and they're also not well trained in these areas. So they're becoming more and more aware of it, but they are tempted to quickly slap that diagnosis on there without digging deeper. Because right, obviously the human body's got everyone's genetics are different. There's so many different facets to this. I think CHS personally is a multifactorial condition. I don't think it's any one thing. I had someone recently tell me that it's purely genetics, which it's absolutely not purely genetics. We have associated statistically significant variants in certain genes. There's the 5 that, in the Russo study, that was done, and again, the sample size was super small. I think I forget exactly how many people returned kits. It was like, I think they sent out, like, 99 kits and, like, only a
Okay.
handful, like, a small portion of those were actually returned, so that's a very small sample size to even draw those 5 statistically
Right.
significant markers from. But they looked at CYP2C9. That's what hydroxylates THC into 11-hydroxy THC, which that intuitively makes sense. They looked at TRPV1, transient receptor, potential vanilloid type 1, capsaicin receptor, which we know is involved, right?
Okay.
So capsaicin cream on the stomach seems to distract or alleviate some of the symptoms of CHS. So it made logical sense to look into TRPV1 as a potential, I guess, or associate as something that's associated with it.
Yeah.
A1 is another one. I believe that's a blood basically, it's something that transports things in and out of the cell. So it binds to different lipids and things like that. So that's another one that was shown to be associated, at least a variant that was associated. Let's see what else was there. There was give me a minute on this.
You're
There's
good.
yeah. Let's see. Trippy one. I think they looked at CNR1 as well. That was not. Um, I could pull up the paper. You know what? Let's just do
Yeah.
that. Because I used to have this pretty much memorized, but uh, it's let's look that one up. Just because
Yeah. Cause
pretty I'm pretty good at memorization.
mhm.
That's why I ended up in biology. But let's see, the genomic survey. Let me pull this up here.
CHS is
Yeah, okay.
something
Now
that,
I'm remembering what I'm missing now. Okay, so yeah,
okay.
it's the dopamine component. I was like, why is there
Gotcha.
like a
Like
whole
5-HT.
there's- no, no, that would be serotonin actually.
Oh, okay.
The dopamine component of this is COMT, so catechol
Okay.
methyltransferase. So that's dopamine turnover. And that one, let's see. So that there's that one, and then as well as DRD2. So that's DRD2 is dopamine receptor type 2. So again, there's a dopaminergic component to this. So I believe that was the 5, right? There were some other things that they found that were not statistically significant, things like CNR1, which is, encodes for your CP1 receptor and other things. I've seen some associations with something called RYR2. That's a ryanodine receptor.
Okay.
Again, there's a lot of pieces, not
Right.
but a lot of those pieces don't perfectly align, I guess, or make a ton of sense. The genomic survey made, I think, a good step, but it certainly didn't solve the puzzle. It gave us more clues, but it didn't solve the puzzle. Um, so yeah, there's obviously consumption, right? How much are you consuming? And do people who have those markers end up with CHS? I think there's some people that do have them, some people that don't entirely. Therefore, I don't think this is, I mean, genetics certainly play a role, but this is not the end all be all study, because if you had something where this was cut and dry, everyone would have issues with those
Right.
5 genes, right? And I think that, again, it's multifactorial. It's probably more than just those genes that are playing a role in this. Um, and then I would also add to the mix here that, like, right, the consumption patterns, like I had mentioned. I mean, we tend to see it in people who overconsume or have done high THC cannabis for a long time. Um, and I think that this everything points to a break somewhere in the endocannabinoid system,
Okay.
and also I think uh, just in general the gastrointestinal kind of signaling. I mean, vagus nerve comes to mind, right? Vagal
Yep.
efferents, and like that.
Well, and
That's
that's what's
another.
in
Yeah,
my type 1 diabetes got damaged from just bad, poor blood sugar control. And that's what caused the gastroparesis. So my stomach, it's got about an 8-hour solid state and 6-hour liquid state emptying time, which is like 3 to 4 times, from what I understand, what it should be. And that was just from vagus nerve damage.
oof, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's like, yeah, that's so there's like a lot of things. And then also let's talk about pesticides, because everyone loves to tell me that
Yeah,
I don't talk
definitely.
about pesticides enough. I'm not dismissing pesticides at all, right? Because you also got to think about, right, sure, we test for 66 pesticides, at least RIAM. We test for in California, we test for 66 pesticides. But what we've learned is anyone who's testing for 66, well, they learn to go to something else. A good example of that would be pymetrozine, which LA Times covered as, like, it's in everything, it seems like. And that's arguably potentially worse than some of the 66 that we are testing for. And then you also get into the thermal degradation of these things. What does it turn into when you smoke it? Or when you ingest it? Liver metabolism, right? There's like, there's a lot of layers of the onion to peel back to actually understand what is causing this. And I think that we can't rule out anything really at this point. We have some clues. Neem, I would rule out at this point, just because I've seen what the overlap is and really looked into this further. There's overlap, but it is not. It's very likely not it.
Okay.
So yeah, pesticides are a factor, genetics are a factor, your consumption patterns are a factor. There's a lot of factors.
Right.
And I don't think that anyone, I mean, what we do know is TRPV1 is implicated because of the cream thing, and capsaicin and how that seems to alleviate things. And I mean, there's other drugs that people take, to sort of, um, get, a sort of, I guess, alleviation from it. Some people have reported that just sleeping it off helps them. So, I mean, benzos are things that distract you or like will, make
Hmm.
you like, that's
Well, I've
one,
heard
I
of
guess.
hot showers too, right?
Well, hot showers as well. Yeah. Sorry. I focus in on capsaicin because I'm focusing on
Is
the
that
chemical,
another
but
TRP trip?
yeah, it's
Okay.
exactly it. So hot, right? So hot being capsaicin or hot showers
So
being
either
another one.
chemically burn yourself with the capsaicin or hot water.
Yeah, that's right. Either hot chemically or yeah, or
Okay.
just
I see.
thermally. Yeah, that's those are different ways to do it. So yeah, that those are like I guess the facets and the pieces that we know about, and there's probably more out there that people have worked on since then. I try and do as much research as I can while also doing what I'm responsible for, which is
Right.
steering ACS, which is a lot of work actually, and I'm not being paid for that. So but I also have to keep the lights on, and really my day job is what I really have to focus on. So I try
Right.
and do as much research as I can. The ACS community helps me kind of tap into a lot of that and see what's up and coming. Um, but then also, trying to do my own research on the side and also read as much PubMed as possible. There's just not enough hours in the day.
No.
Uh, yeah, I actually really cut back on because I've actually been off THC for a while now. I've
Okay.
I have actually found that it's really, I do miss great sleep. I actually still use a little bit of cannabinol,
Okay.
CBN, right? Because actually I find that it's gentle enough that I don't wake up groggy.
Okay.
50 milligrams seems to be the sweet spot for that. I think obviously everyone's endocannabinoid system is different, but at least the clinical data that I've seen suggests 50 milligrams was the sweet spot. So I just made some coconut oil capsules and it
Nice.
works great. I don't wake up groggy. I get the best sleep ever. Well, I wouldn't say the best sleep ever. I get better sleep than I would have otherwise. But
Right.
exercise, right? I've just been doing a lot more exercise. Been really researching on supplements more than anything lately. I'm like super excited about supplementation and nutritional biochem and just understanding. And again, I hate the term biohacking, but I've always been into kind of understanding supplements and what they do for you or what their
Mhm.
potentials are to really kind of, better living through chemistry type of thing.
Yeah, let's
Um,
dive into that because ever since you mentioned the vitamin D a couple weeks ago when we first started talking, I went and bought some extra and I doubled my dose up because we get no sunlight up here in Sault Ste. Marie, especially in the winter. So that's one thing that I've been trying to do is focus on supplementation as much as I can to kind of help aid where possible, especially because that gastroparesis makes it hard to eat a lot of volume through the day. So adding nutrition or supplementation uh, through just pills helps out. Is there a supplement you've been on recently that you're really interested in or a new latest and greatest?
I mean, okay, so I guess the new latest and greatest for me, and this one, so I rest in peace to this podcast, Smart Drug Smarts, man. Jesse Lawler was so cool. I really liked that guy. I don't know whatever they were going to reboot it at some point, I thought, but I haven't heard from him in years now. Um, but I learned about methylene blue. You've probably used this
Yeah, I've
in
heard of
chemistry
it.
lab. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's I believe it's pH sensitive. So they use it as it's a dye, right? And so methylene blue is talked about on this podcast. And one, it's a little bit weird because it makes you pee blue. So that
To be
obviously it's like one of
interesting.
those things that people are like,
Yeah. Whoa.
oh, that's a little
Yeah.
crazy.
Shocking.
Yeah, a little
Well, that means
shocking.
it's not being absorbed into the body, though, right? Because if it's being
No,
excreted,
it's being excreted, but it doesn't not they've actually done, they've looked into, like, basically after someone's been taking methylene blue, you can see that it actually dyes internally,
jeez.
things
Oh wow.
blue as
Oh,
well. It
okay.
does get the fact that it is being excreted, though, means that they've done tracers, they can see, yeah, it gets into the places where it gets into cells.
Okay.
So what's it actually doing? It's basically a mitochondrial enhancer. I'm on it right now.
Interesting.
uh, yeah, so I cycle this one, but methylene blue is really awesome. So it basically helps with your whole electron transport chain and all the redox chemistry in there. So basically, the reduced form, which would be MBH2, right,
Okay.
gets in there and it actually helps facilitate. It's actually acts as like a shortcut on the electron transport chain. So
Okay.
it sort of uh, kind of shifts the balance in your electron transport chain towards generating more ATP.
Hmm.
So your
That's
mitochondria become
interesting.
more efficient. One thing to caution with it, though, is that it is an MAOI. So if
Okay.
you're taking SSRIs or something like that, absolutely, that's a no go. Do not do that, please. Do not. So not also, I want to add, not medical advice, people, not a clinician.
Yeah. No.
Uh, not a clinician, not medical advice. This is a nutraceutical that you should do your own research on, but definitely don't take it if you're on SSRIs because they can have very bad outcomes. The dose is very important. You want to start small and work your way up, anywhere from a half a milligram up to one. Uh, I'm up to 10, but that's like kind of the limit, I would say. Well, at least that's my limit. I wouldn't want to go beyond 10 because actually it's dose dependent, like anything, right?
Right. The
Just like
dose makes the
cannabinoids.
poison.
Well, yeah, yeah, Paracelsus, right? But it's just like the bell curve, right? There's an optimal zone, and then there is a point of diminishing returns. and it actually can make mitochondrial output worse if you take more
Okay.
is not better in this case, and it can actually cause dysfunction and problems. But yeah, I was hesitant about taking this for the reasons back when first learned about it in like 2013 or something.
Okay.
But and I was really into nootropics at that time. I kind of dabbled in all the different racetams. I dabbled in um, things like Nuapept, piracetam, phenylracetam, oxyracetam. That was exploiting LTP,
Okay.
basically, long-term potentiation, right? So strengthening of connections between different synapses. Um, and I learned about a lot of the space through that. So anyway, I was on that podcast and I listened to a lot of the episodes, and methylene blue came up. But now it's starting to come up in mainstream media again. And these are from like really seasoned, well-respected clinicians. And so I'm like, all right, this is probably about 2, 3 months ago. I was like, all right, I'm gonna take the plunge. I'm gonna give it a go.
Did you notice
I've been
any like big effects or changes?
I feel like my cognitive ability, it's like my mental ability to do mental gymnastics is greatly enhanced. I
Interesting.
do pee blue. Yes. Alien pee is weird, but it works. It's helpful.
Interesting.
And again, like I said, we know that it works because you can see it when they look at the stains of the cells and it's in there. Um,
Okay.
it's in there, and obviously it gets excreted, so it's not just staying in there. But I think again with anything, there's no biological free lunch, so it's always good to cycle things in and out.
Certainly.
Yeah, so I mean that's methylene blue. But also creatine, the latest research on creatine seems to be it's not just for gym bros and for workouts. It's really helpful as well for all things cognitive. Because again, another thing where it helps out with producing more ATP. When you have more ATP, your body can do more things, your repair gets better, all these things get better. It does help you hold water as well. Helps you build muscle. Helps you, when you're at the gym, obviously more ATP,
Yep.
more ability to lift and get those gains. So yeah, that again, creatine. I was always skeptical of it because I thought, isn't that just going to inflate your muscles and then you know when you go off of it, then
Sure.
they deflate. So that was my philosophy for a while. But the more and more I keep hearing about it, the more and more my kind of perspective on creatine has actually changed, and I started trying it for myself. Basically, how you do this is you start by loading a lot first. So you could take up to
10
20,
grams is
uh,
10.
25, I
Well,
think, is
okay.
when you're first
Wow.
starting. It's a lot.
Interesting.
So you take a lot to load up your muscles, including your brain is a muscle, right? Also, it's a fatty muscle, but it is a muscle in its own way. Um, yeah. So so you load up, right? You get it all into your cells, and that's your loading phase. That's for 5 days. And then from there, it's just maintenance. So I take 5 grams a day.
Okay.
Um, I did do Function recently. I don't know if you're familiar with Function Health,
No.
but that's one. It's on. It's basically an expanded biomarker test
Okay.
that more than what most. Right, you have an annual physical, and they do all these different markers to understand where your health is at, if you're with, or if you're in or outside of spec of what is normal for healthy physiology. This does a lot more. I also got sequencing done as well. That's a whole separate thing. But all this to say is I was off creatine because they actually advise you just to get a good baseline,
Yep.
right,
That
to stay
makes
off of
sense.
everything.
Yeah.
Um,
I like
so
creatine, especially when I'm sleep deprived too. I find that it helps with cognition. That mixed with coenzyme, was it coenzyme
Co-
Q10?
CoQ10, yeah,
Yep. And then alpha GPC as well were like the
that's another.
three in combination that I've been really kind of playing with the past probably 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, I
And
used to play with Alpha GPC as well when I was in my nootropics heyday, and I that one actually. Have you heard of something called the Mister Happy Stack?
I have not, no.
So the Mr. Happy Stack is actually really cool. So anyone who's likes their dopamine augmenting substances, cannabis being one of them, dopamine releasing agents, if you're taking any type of stimulants, this actually helps sort of. So it's both a recovery and focus stack.
Okay.
So it's got three components, three primary components. So it's uridine monophosphate, either uridine mono, some sort of uridine. Monophosphate is one source that you can take, and then there's also triacetyluridine. If you're going the triacetyluridine route, that one's actually pretty potent. I would recommend people like not go too hard on it because it can really jack you up. Then there's not jack you up like bad and hurt you, but it kind of gets you a little. It's intense. I
Energetic.
feel like a little, yeah, a little energized makes your wheels
Okay.
spin. I feel like a lot. So those are the uridine sources. There's the uridine source. As much uh, omega-3 fatty acids as you can stomach. Um, Not as much, but I mean, like, take a decent amount of them. Take a couple grams. I take krill oil personally. The reason why I take krill oil, it's got astaxanthin in it, which is good for it's an antioxidant. It's good for a lot of different things, eye health and things like that.
Okay.
Um, but it's also um, phospholipid form, which is the triglycerides are in. It's basically it's bound to phospholipids. Those phospholipids help with bioavailability.
Okay. Gotcha.
And so with that, right, you're basically able to get better absorption because a lot of the fish oil that's out there is ethyl ester. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
No.
but ethyl ester is basically just what they use to stabilize it.
Okay.
So like you go to Costco, go to the Kirkland brand. It's it's ethyl ester. It's omega-3 ethyl esters, which helps with the shelf life because obviously at Costco stack them deep and sell them cheap, and it
Right.
sits on the shelf for a while. And it's hot, cold, whatever, wherever it's stored. It helps with that, but it does not. Get absorbed as well. It actually, you got to cleave that ester, and then it becomes fish. The actual EPA and DHA,
Okay.
and so that's not as you're not actually getting as much as you think because it's in that form, and it's not as bioavailable.
Okay.
So anyway, that's why I take krill. So again, so we're talking uridine, krill, and then alpha GPC. That's where we were going with this, the
Yeah.
alpha
Yeah.
GPC. So this kind of cocktail of these three things basically elevates. So the alpha GPC elevates D2, or dopamine type 2 receptor, which is why you get more output or you get more, you're able to do more, you're motivated more. It's a subtle, I would liken this to subtle motivation without stimulation.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the upregulation of D2 that occurs. And then there's also an increase in brain phosphatides. So brain phosphatides think cell membrane components, right? So it's a repair stack. So if you're doing your partying or whatever and you're on any type of stimulant or anything like that, this helps upregulate that D2. So obviously you're downregulating after you're doing something like that. So that upregulates it back and then also increases the circulation of those cell membrane components. So it's helping repair the brain as well um, in the process. So that's the Mr. Happy Stack overall.
I needed that back when I was on Adderall to get me through the classes. That would have helped a ton.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I would argue as well. I think I've mentioned this already, but there's no biological free lunch. You have to be super selective about when, where, how you use these things. Using any of these things like all the time obviously leads to a loss in efficacy. Just like anything, you get a tolerance. So I look at this as sort of like a supplemental toolbox. How am I? What do I need? How do I need to perform today? Um,
I
and
like that.
what am I hoping to get out of my day, or what do I need to? How do I need to focus today? Do I need to be energized today? Do I need to rest? Do I need like there's and I think you and I have talked about the importance of things like rest after burnout. Obviously,
Certainly.
you just completed a lot of work, and also, yeah, you're now graduated. So yeah, but burnout is totally, and
Yeah.
especially everyone in the cannabis industry who's been here long enough. If you haven't experienced burnout, you really haven't been in the cannabis industry yet.
No. Well,
This is
it took
not
me
for
a
the faint
while
of heart.
too. I've been in it almost 10 years now, and I'm just now starting to kind of really feel the effects of it and look like, oh, is there any other industry hiring right now since cannabis doesn't want to seem to want to expand in Michigan? But yeah, I definitely feel that the burnout does get real in cannabis.
Michigan's a tough market too, man.
It is.
It's the race to the bottom out there. It's already. I feel like it
It
has bottomed out quite
It
a
it
bit.
was, but it wasn't though, because we saw that for a couple years, and those loss leaders, it didn't really kind of work out in their favor. I think they were hoping a lot of the small mom and pops would go out of business as a result, but they weathered the storm. And so a lot of the lost leaders ended up in receivership or just went out of business. So sure, it tanked the market, but I think a lot of the price drops that you've seen in the past, like 3 to 4 years, has just been unlocks in technology or the state making it easier on us. Like we don't have to apply as many labels. So now we can simplify that production. And like we did a really deep dive into the cost of production in Michigan. And granted, it was like using 2024's utility prices and water prices, whatnot, but it was like 350 to 400 a pound, and you're still averaging like across the board 650, 700 a pound in Michigan. So your indoor can still compete. You just have to really utilize technology optimization. A lot of grows are still stuck on single tier HPS and not using like inner canopy lighting, um, not really employing that. Like I know grows that are still hand watering, and it's like you can really unlock a lot of efficiency gains with just a little bit of investment into technology. And we didn't see a lot of operators do that in Michigan. Well, to their own fault, they kind of are witnessing this race to the bottom. But I push back on that narrative just because we crunched the numbers and like it was like a 70-page long document that included like trash pickup. And that's how detailed we were in our costs. And there was still money to be made. So I push back on that narrative that you can't compete in Michigan.
No, I mean, hey, you
Mhm.
know more about your own state's market than I do. I will
Well,
definitely
that was
concede that.
only
I
through
can't. You
that
can't.
deep dive because I was tired of
Yeah,
hearing it on LinkedIn. I'm like, if it's
yeah. Well,
not
you also can't be an
viable,
expert in everything, right? You know,
right?
that's kind of especially like there's so many different markets
Was
that are
crazy.
emerging, and they're all nuanced. They all have their own little particularities. So I try and be a generalist
Hmm.
and a polymath with a lot of different things.
Nice.
And I think that's actually the best way to go in this world that we're
Yes.
bombarded with so much information all the time. It's like you can't be an expert at everything. I mean, I never got the PhD in science also because I didn't want to be pigeonholed into this being the expert, this top point, the top
Yeah.
0.01% of this one very niche or like I guess specialized subject area.
Yep.
I'd rather learn about a lot of different things and be well-rounded on a lot of different things,
I'm with you on
personally.
that. I've been kind of adopting this notion lately of being the pothead polymath and like leaning into that jack of all trades, master of none. Cause like, especially when I try to think about content for Instagram or YouTube as of lately, it's like I've got interest on the business side, the chemistry side, extraction, compliance when I look at like the polymer leaching and vape carts. So it's like, you got to really kind of pick and draw from all those different aspects, and having that polymath mentality is really beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most successful people are that, right? Because it in today's world, you have to know a lot of different things about you have to know a lot about a lot of different things in order to, especially if you're a business owner, like
Yeah,
gotta become
it's
you don't have
brutal.
to be an expert on everything, but you do need to know the general basics of a lot of different things in order to move up in the world and to have a successful business. So that's kind of the way I look at it is just know a little bit about everything. Try and I think having technical depth and being able to go deep on things as much as possible is beneficial, but it's not essential. Um,
Okay,
depending on what you're looking at, right? Or depending on what your focus is.
that's
Obviously in
fair.
science, that is very important, but and we're talking about business, know a lot about all the things and, at least focus in and go deep on the things that you really need to know, not but you don't need to know everything and you can't, right?
Right, and that's where
So
you
you
just
do the
hire
best you
out
can.
those specialists.
Correct. Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Knowing when you're the expert and knowing when you're not, I think is very important when you're doing business and science in general, right? I always try and hand the reins to the people who really know what they're talking about. I think, especially with a lot of consultants in the space, I've noticed they think that they project that they know everything or that they are the expert. And yeah, you can't be an expert at everything. And overpromising and under-delivering is a surefire way to piss people off and
Yeah.
be associated with doing bad business. So, I mean, again, I'm an expert on the microbial side. I know that. That's my area. That's my lane. Um, I know a lot about the analytical chemistry of cannabis too. Am I the expert on method validation for LC triple quad and GC triple quad? No, definitely not. Do I know about it? Do I know about ion suppression and matrix effects and all these things? Yeah, I could talk about it. Have I done the work to really become a triple quad master? No, but I know enough about it, but I'm not the expert. I'd relegate that to somebody else. You know? It's important in science to say you don't know.
That is true.
There's so many people that just want to say that I know it all and or
A
spew an
lot of
answer that
ego.
may not be right. A lot of ego.
It's
Yeah.
That's the one thing that kind of steered me away from academia because at one time I was really heavily exploring doing the PhD route for organic chemistry or med chem, and one, the underappreciation for the job, it was a big one, and then two, it was like the university politics mixed with, I think, ego goes along with the politics, or at least causes a lot of it, that it was like, I don't know if this is for me. More power to
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you can survive in academia, man, you can survive
That's
anywhere. I
brutal.
feel like it's not fun. I feel like
No,
I I enjoy a lot of the work I've done in cannabis because a lot of it, at least especially in the early days, it's a lot of fun. As we get into a more tightly regulated environment, it's a lot more well, you have to be a lot more discerning. You got to be a lot more disciplined. You got to be very careful. You got to be a lot more careful now. But it's still fun. I still enjoy it. I still meet some of the best people ever. There are also a lot of bad people too that you meet and you learn to stay away.
sadly,
Uh,
yep,
Sadly, I mean, but that's any industry. That's life in general,
yep.
right? So I just keep the ones I like close and the people who, have always supported me and, looked out for me. I keep those people close and hold them dear, and I try and extend the olive branch and kind of outreach as much as I can. There's it's going to be really wild to see how this all shakes out. I will say that as well, especially with S3 coming up. Um, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know. I can't read the tea leaves, especially because I feel like at least with the current climate, everything changes on the drop of a hat. Uh, And I mean, there's a lot of interests that are fighting over the future of what this is going to look like. So I just try and stay abreast of everything and hold tight. You know what I
That's
mean?
all you can do. Do you think that Schedule 3 will bring, like, easier research, or at least as a researcher, do you think Schedule 3 brings any benefits for someone in your position or our position?
Um, yes and no. Well, so right, a big problem with cannabis research right now is that, and it hasn't changed. It won't change under Schedule 3 because of something that was actually signed in to law by Biden, which is, I think it was the Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act. That sounds great on paper, but the devil's in the details.
No, how bad is it?
Well, despite it creates actually specific hoops that cannabis researchers have to jump through,
Okay.
regardless of its scheduling.
Jeez.
Which is actually like, okay, again, that's why I say devil's in the details. So it's actually still just as hard. It doesn't actually do, again, politics, a lot of smoke and mirrors in politics. It doesn't actually do anything to change anything. At least the executive order also, we're not still Schedule 3. All that did was say, hurry up,
Yeah,
DOJ, tell DEA to hurry up about their review of this. That doesn't make it Schedule 3 overnight. The president doesn't have the authority to do that. And so I think that's what a lot of people have missed about this as well is
certainly.
it's an important detail because we are definitely not operating in Schedule 3. No, Schedule 3 does not legalize cannabis, obviously.
Mm-mm.
It just it puts it it's still a controlled substance, still under the CSA. But it does allow medical doctors to start talking about it more and recommending things to their patients, which I think is a critical thing that we've been missing. I mean, anyone who knows about the history of cannabis in this country knows about USP 6630507. For those of you who do not know what alphabet soup and numbers I just rifled off, that is cannabinoids. Is a patent from the USPT is US patent from Health and Human Services that basically labeled cannabinoids as antioxidants and neuroprotectants. That should say it all. That was held
Sounds
by
like
the US government.
medicinal Medicinal
Sounds like
benefits
something.
to me.
Yeah, exactly. Sure sounds like medicinal benefits to me. So
Mhm,
anybody who's been paying attention, this patent expired, I believe, in 2005, so it expired a long time ago. Maybe it was file. It's I'm forgetting exactly when it expired, but it expired some time ago. So they were trying to corner this a long time ago already.
mhm,
You know, it like that. But that spells out very clearly. You guys knew this was medicine. You've known it's medicine, but yet somehow it's kept the Schedule One designation up until, I mean, it's still technically Schedule One today.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, but we're seeing things. There's the walls are starting to be lowered. They're starting to concede. They have conceded that cannabis is a medicine, which is a good step. It's not what a lot of us would like to see, which is outright
right.
descheduling. Because I mean, if you can have alcohol not be scheduled, which is not a medicine, then all the
Well, and
things that kill you or are bad for you are ironically not scheduled.
I know, and I like to remind people too, like ketamine is a Schedule 3 drug medication, and you don't see a ketamine clinic on every block like you do a dispensary. So to say that Schedule 3 is like it's a move in the right direction, yeah, but I definitely agree it's not what we wanted, and I don't know if it's necessarily great for the industry. Only time will tell.
Yeah, exactly. Time will tell. I think, yeah, it will be interesting to see how it all shakes out. I don't know what's going to happen there. I think a lot of people are worried that state regulated cannabis markets are going to go away. I don't believe that, but what I do see coming potentially, and again, this is just a prediction, or I guess, what I think may happen is, there's obviously, I don't have a crystal ball, but one thing that the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment states, which that's basically what protects these state cannabis programs, right? Um, One thing that it did say is, well, if the states can properly regulate the markets, then we have no reason to interfere. However, have you seen the states do a good job of regulating in some places? I think they're going to point to this lab shopping thing, and and all the proliferation of hemp and penetration of hemp into the regulated markets. They're going to
Yep.
they have a ample amount. They have a laundry list of things that they can just say, well, that wasn't regulated well, or that wasn't regulated well. Look, here's how all of this shaked out. Um, I think that what they could do is point to that and say, "Well, yeah, no, this is now under federal control."
Well, that would
That's
not be
just
good.
that would not be good, but it may happen that way.
Might
Um,
open up interstate commerce though if it was under one federal rule set.
there's good. You got to look for the silver linings,
Yeah,
especially
I
in
tried to.
this world we live in today. Got to
my
look for
my
those silver linings.
especially after all of last year, my quote that I've adopted is that opportunity favors the optimist. And so like just stay optimistic in every opportunity and opportunity will present itself. So that's what I try to do is just find silver linings and things. But I mean, I think in this industry, you almost have to like, because it forces you to adapt so much or it just changes so quickly. It's very easy to get bleak and down on the industry. But at the end of the day, you got to remind yourself how far we've come in the past 10, 20 years. And, you know, at
Yeah, zooming out
one
always
time,
helps.
yeah, like
Zooming
it,
out always helps, and remembering the little things and having gratitude for the little things. I mean, as someone who's got a lot of brain power up here, I fixate a lot, and that's a problem that I'm really trying to work on, is stop fixating on the negative and stop thinking about what's going wrong and start thinking about what's going right,
yep,
you know? Because where your attention goes, it grows.
that's so true. Yeah,
So if focus on the good things, focus on what's going right in your life, focus on, your friends, your family, your finances, romance, whatever. Like, focus on things that are healthy for you,
right.
um,
Yeah,
rather than fixating on, oh, this didn't go my way. Focus on what you can control, because there's a lot that is unpredictable. You're not gonna be able to control everything. Our brains love control. Our brains love to think that it knows the outcome or predicts outcomes. It's anticipatory. But if you just control that better, and again, I am like the worst example of being someone who I'm trying to speak it into existence lately, more than ever. Because if you focus on the bad things, like, oh God, doom scrolling through Instagram and just seeing all these horrible atrocities that are happening right now, it's not going to help you. It's
Right.
not, and that's where they want you, honestly, I think, is, glued to your phone, looking at, you know, all the bad, focusing all the bad in the world, and really depleting yourself of critical thinking as well. ChatGPT. Um, let's outsource our thinking and, go on ChatGPT, right? And just that's what they want, I feel like. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. All I know is I'm just trying to stay up, like you said, maintain optimism, or what is it? The optimist,
Yeah,
the optimist favors the optimist.
opportunity favors the optimist. So, yeah, and I just try to like filter out things that I don't have control over. If it's like something that, eh, I mean, like you said, there's so many atrocities and big things going on in the world. It's easy to get sucked into those. So if I just like, okay, what stuff can I control? What can't I? If I can't control it, I'm not going to pay attention to it. So I think that's one thing that helps too.
Another quote I would that I like is "Chance favors the prepared mind."
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things. Again, it's cannabis industry is like 4D chess. So if you can at least stay clear and calm and kind of not look at things as not catastrophize or look at things as like this is absolutely what's going to happen, but think about all the different scenarios and possibilities and stay grounded, right? A prepared mind. A prepared mind is calm, collected, knows potential outcomes. That's how you succeed in the crazy world we live in today, in my opinion.
Oh, that's a really good one. More truer words have not been said. Wow, I think with that we wrap this one up, and we've been going a little over an hour. I don't want to take too much of your time. Um, Definitely appreciate you hopping on. Is there anything else you want to kind of leave the viewers with?
Um, like I said, look at the silver linings. I gotta say, there's a lot of, I mean, this podcast, but other podcasts, like podcasting has actually been really helpful for me. Get outside, go touch grass, go be in the
That's a good
sunshine.
one.
You know, we are and socialize, don't isolate, especially in trying times like these. Lean on your support networks. And yeah, like you said, stay optimistic, look at the silver linings, and yeah, stay curious as well. That's always being curious is uh, important. If you're not curious about things or not driven to learn more, I mean, you got to always be learning. This world is changing faster than I could have ever imagined. So stay up to date, and yeah, just keep keep clear, calm, and collected.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kyle. Again, I appreciate you hopping on today. And for everyone watching, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what type of stuff you want to see in the future. And with that, I will leave you to have your own higher thoughts. But still got to figure out a good way to wrap this whole thing up.
Well,
But
hey,
yeah,
thanks for having me.
thank you.
I really enjoyed the conversation.
Likewise.